be to order. Welcome, Mr. Cronman, Mr. Bradley. We don't get to see you every week, so thank you for being here.
Mr. Chair, Mick Cronman will actually make the presentation, then we'll be glad to answer any questions you might have.
Great. Mr. Cronman.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chair and members of the Ordinance Committee. My name is Mick Cronman. I'm Harbor Operations Manager for the city's Waterfront Department. And the item you have before you today is the department's latest, if you will, offering in an attempt to make more efficient and better utilize the slip waiting list at the waterfront. And as probably, Das, I'm sure you recall, but Councilmember Francisco may not recall, we in Councilmember House as well, greetings, back in 2005, we brought before the council a series of ordinances and resolutions that really did a major restructuring of the department slip waiting list policy. And what I'd like to do, Mr. Chair, if you'll allow me, is give a brief backgrounder on that so the other council members are aware of how we got to where we are today. Historically, going all the way back to the 1970s, the department has maintained a slip waiting list for individuals who wanted to have month-to-month berthing privileges in Santa Barbara Harbor. And originally, the waiting list was structured in a manner, set up in a manner where an individual would sign up on the waiting list in a specialized slip category, slip size category, 25-footers, 30-footers, 40-footers, 50-footers, what have you. And that existed for quite a while until the late 1990s. We began to notice that some slip sizes being more more popular, had turned over more quickly than other slip sizes. And what we found out, we ended up with sort of an inequity where some slip size categories were being exhausted, or if you will, depleted more quickly than other slip size categories. So you had people who had been on a slip waiting list for a certain category for 5 years getting a slip, while somebody else was in a category that was, say, more popular and had a longer waiting time for 25 years. And so what we did is we came before the council in 2005 with a proposition that we would take all the names that were on the waiting list, and we would call that the master waiting list. And then we would also take all of the same names, no more, no fewer, exact same individuals, and create what has now become known as the submaster list by ordinance. And what the submaster list is, it's all those slip size categories collapsed into a single column with individuals placed by date of chronological date of application, so that when, say for example, and this is purely hypothetical example, a slip size, let's say a 30-foot slip became available, and let's say that slip size category had been exhausted or was depleted, what we would first do would be to go to the submaster list and see, okay, who was the very first person who signed up for a slip in Santa Barbara Harbor? It may have been a 40-footer, a 45-footer, and we make that offer to them. Would you be willing to, would you like a 30-footer? We have that. So that was one of the elements that we incorporated into our new slip waiting list policy. The other was the addition of a limited, what's called the lottery list. The lottery list is subordinate to the master/submaster list. And what that is, that was a lottery that 50 names were drawn out of the hat and added subordinately to the master and submaster list, so that if a slip came up for offer and was declined by everybody on the submaster list, it would then be offered in order of rank to individuals on the lottery list, of which we now have 34. That all has worked well until we came to the issue of 20-foot slips. 20-foot slips are the smallest slips we have to offer in Santa Barbara Harbor, which range from 20 to 60 and even larger end ties. And with the 20-foot slips, what we found was that that category was exhausted in 2001, and until 2005, until the new policies and procedures were adopted, we were sort of hamstrung. We had no mechanism by which to really assign those. After the council adopted those ordinances and resolutions in 2005, we went about the effort of assigning what at the time were 6 available 20-foot slips in Santa Barbara Harbor. 20-foot slips are not always the most popular because, quite frankly, it's a trailerable size of boat, and the maintenance, associated with keeping a boat on what's called the wetted surface in a berth is a lot more expensive sometimes than keeping it on a trailer. So there are a lot of factors, and not often a channel boat to cross the channel and go to the island. So it's not the most popular slip size category. So we had 6 of these. And in 2005, following the Council's action, we began to offer these through the submaster list. We assigned 1 through the submaster list, and we assigned 1 more through the lottery list, which left us with a total of 4. That process alone took us to January of this year, because we had to offer them per the Council, per the policy, we had to offer them in the batches, like 4 at a time, and then we had to wait a certain amount of time, I believe it's 2 weeks, to get responses back, and then converse with those people about their interests and what have you. That took time, and then another batch of 4, and to get all the way through the submaster list and the lottery list, with which there's a total of 84 names now, took quite a long time. One other thing I should mention is that per the ordinance and resolutions that were adopted in 2005, there is a quote-unquote assignment fee associated with the lottery list that anybody who accepts a slip from the waiting list that's offered to them from who is on the lottery list is required to pay a lottery list assignment fee that is equal to the department's slip transfer fee at that time. So we went through these. We ended up with only 2 assignments. 4 were outstanding, and we first had an in-house discussion. What do we think was the reason that folks didn't take these slips? Some of them are the reasons I've already articulated to you. We also thought it was possible that the assignment fee was a deterrent relative to the utility of a 20-foot slip. And so we went back to the Harbor Commission in February to speak with them and have a conversation about what's the best way to proceed in order to assign these slips, both to accommodate the boating public and to enhance our waterfront revenues, though quite frankly it's not that much. The real driver is to make sure we accommodate the boating public and their interests and needs. We put 2 options essentially on the table for the Harbor Commission to study, which we thought were to consider, which we thought were the 2 most viable. One was to go back through the process, including the lottery list, and either reduce or eliminate that assignment fee, hopefully making that more attractive for a person to take a 20-foot slip assignment. The other was to maintain the integrity of the policy relative to the assignment fee and have a separate general lottery for individuals in the general public who might be interested in 20-foot slips. Reminder, this is just applicable to 20-foot slips. It's our experience and intuitive belief that anything other than a 20, a 25, a 30 would have gone to either the submaster list or the lottery list. I think Director Briley and I are pretty convinced of that. And the Harbor Commission, and I think with staff consensus, I think we were all on the same page here, elected to vote for the option that suggested we have a general lottery for 20-foot slips should we go through this process an entire time and have no takers, because per the municipal code as it stands now, otherwise we would have had to wait 6 months and go through the exact same process again. And we I think I speak for the director, we're convinced that that probably wouldn't have yielded any different results than we got. And I should mention also that during this process, we fielded several inquiries from individuals, and individuals also appeared at the Harbor Commission meeting in February who said they were willing to take a 20-foot slip. In fact, one individual wanted to come and sign a check that night. I encouraged him that the dramatic part of it wasn't necessary, but the information was important. And so we believe there are people out there in the general public who would be willing, via a general lottery for these 20-foot slips, if it comes to that, if there are no takers on the submaster or lottery list, to step up and pay the assignment fee and take these 20-foot slips. So what you have, in conclusion, we believe that ultimate adoption of the ordinance and resolution that you have before you today would result in assignment of those slips, thus better accommodating, more efficiently accommodating the boating public, and to a degree marginally enhancing our waterfront revenues. And with that, I would conclude my report. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Are there any questions from committee members? Mr. House?
I'm glad to hear the Harbor Commission. I'm sure they had gone over this, but I didn't see it referenced in here, maybe in the report. Maybe it is in here, that they had made this recommendation to us?
At the very, very end.
Oh, in conclusion, the Harbor Commission voted unanimously. Okay, thank you very much. How did I miss that? And then how much is the slip transfer fee that would apply to this?
The slip transfer fee is currently $200 a foot. That would apply until, actually, it probably wouldn't apply by the time this is adopted and the referendum period on the ordinance passes, but it would still be $200 for 20-foot slips. In our '09 budget, we have, I believe it's going to be $225 for all slip sizes greater than 20s, but in the spirit of exactly what we've described today, we're trying to keep the transfer fee stable for the smallest of the slips. It would remain $200 for 20-footers.
So it would be $4,000.
That's correct, Councilman Browse.
And so it's scaled by the size of the slip.
Lineal,
Linear.
yes, sir.
Linear.
But like I say, the only difference is for 20-footers. The rest of all the sizes will go to $225 on July 1st.
Now that's a one-time payment, and as long as they maintain their monthly their pay monthly ongoingly, they're covered. They don't have to do that on an annual basis, or
That's
is that
correct.
One time.
That's correct.
Okay.
Any questions? Well, I just have to recognize that there is not anyone in the room for public comment, but just in case someone's hiding behind a bench, I do need to open this up for public comment and then close it for public comment. And my only question is sort of some of the questions that people in the public might have from this discussion, which is, how long do a lot of these folks wait? I mean, if I am hoping someday, maybe in my 50s, to have enough money to have a boat, should I get on the waiting list now if I'm a member of the public, or what is the?
Oh no, the 50s.
Mr. Chair, to answer your question, part of the changes that were made in 2005 was actually it was officially done in 2000. The waiting list was closed in order to, A, not create false expectations because it's, quite frankly, one of the jewels of our city. Demand wildly exceeds supply at the waterfront. We have 1,100 slips, and we probably have, 10 times that many people who would like to have one. So in the interest of not creating false expectations and doing a good job of managing the resources we've got and the interest we have expressed in those berths, we closed that in 2000, and that was reaffirmed in at 2005, the adoption of the ordinance and resolutions. The amount of time you wait for a slip if you're currently on the waiting list is broadly variable as well. For example, we don't have any 35-foot slip people on the list for 35-footers. That has actually been depleted, and it's not unusual to get a 35-foot slip or get a slip either from non-payment of fees, death of a sole slip permittee, or just sometimes they revert to the city. It could be for, quite frankly, we've terminated slips for not following the harbor rules and regulations. We average about 3 assignments a year from the slip waiting list. When I joined the city 8 years ago, there were about 75 people on what is now known as the master list. Now there are 50. Most of those have been, the assignments have ranged from 20 to 60 feet in my recollection. So it's quite variable, and I'm forced to say random, because you never know when somebody's going to lose their berthing privileges for non-payment or bad behavior or the death of a sole slip permittee. But we average about 3 a year.
Then the only other question I had is, was there a discussion for any other use for these slips? Like, is there commercial, or could this be a commercial slip in addition to, if there was demand for, or most commercial fishermen too large of vessels for this slip, or what's?
Mr. Chair, you bring up a good point. I think the answer to the commercial fishing aspect of it is yes, you're spot on relative to their needs. The only in-house discussion we've had relative to these slips, should there be, well, let me go back. The only in-house discussion we've had relative to alternatives for these slips was the following. If we felt we've done due diligence relative to going through the submaster list, the lottery list, and now even a new procedure, a general lottery, for trying to assign these berths, and they still remained unassigned because, quite frankly, the general trend throughout California is toward larger slips, larger boats. We don't think so here in Santa Barbara. We think there's a quote-unquote, market to assign these berths to individuals who are interested in boating from Santa Barbara. But should it come to pass, hypothetically, that, let's say, we didn't assign any of these 20-foot slips, then we would have to sit down and do some hard thinking, not necessarily about assigning them to other interests, but doing some reconfiguration of the docks and providing larger berth opportunities. But we don't think we're there yet. We don't think we've done, we completed our job of due diligence trying to assign these 20-foot berths to a boating public we believe still needs and wants to utilize that size of slip.
Well, I'm pleased that you're attempting to carve out space for the little guy, and I'd be happy to second any motion on this ordinance change.
Okay, Mr. Chair. I have read, and I think we all have very carefully, the small changes to the actual ordinance and the resolution they have before us. So with that, I move that we recommend to the City Council to approve an ordinance and resolution pertaining to the assignment of slip permits for 20-foot slips through a 20-foot slip lottery.
Second?
Second.
All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Passes. With that, I'll adjourn.